Pro wrestling is a very strange sport. It's a bunch of half-naked people fighting each other, but not actually hurting each other, only pretending to hurt each other, but it still hurts doing it because they still have to do stuff that is actually painful, but it's not as painful as you think because what I'm trying to get at is pro wrestling is weird, and the people who do pro wrestling are even weirder, and that's why I love it so much. So, for this video, I'm going to talk about what I think, or who I think more accurately, is the strangest, most insane pro wrestler to ever hit the mainstream audience. Mainstream being a bit subjective because pro wrestling is already a bit of a niche. But nevertheless, I'm going to talk about the Ultimate Warrior. Now, before I talk about the Ultimate Warrior, some people who watch pro wrestling, and if they ever bother to watch this video, which most likely than not, they're not, but if they do and they know pro wrestling, they might wonder, hey, the Ultimate Warrior, sure, there's some crazy stories about him, but surely are crazier people. And you know what? There probably is. Guys like, Marty Jannetty, Sonny, and New Jack are all crazy people, but Marty Jannetty, New Jack, and Sonny all have honestly more sad and depressing stories than, say, the Ultimate Warrior. Though, to be fair, he has some pretty sad and depressing stories themselves, which I'll probably not cover. I'm just going to basically, in this video, ramble a lot, give a brief rundown on how the Ultimate Warrior, who the Ultimate Warrior is, what he did, how he got there, and what happened to him. Mainly just talk about how crazy he became after getting all this fame. This is gonna be different from my regular videos. When I say regular videos, I post like once a year, but nevertheless, it's gonna be different from those other videos in which this is just me rambling, talking top of my head. And right now, as you're listening to this, this is basically just use this as background noise. Really dumb, rambling, nonsensical background noise, but background noise nevertheless. Just treat it background noise. Basically, I'm just going to talk about it, and as I talk about it, I'm going to play this game called Hotline Miami. If you look at your screen, it's probably the logo of the Hotline Miami start screen up there. Yeah, I'm just going to be playing on this and rambling a lot. There's going to be some cuts because I'm going to like lose my train of thought. I need to start recording, I need to look at my notes and all that, so my notes are on the side. I'm going to play this game casually. Hello, this is Future Bill. As you can see, clearly I am not playing Hotline Miami, and that's because my laptop is a potato and cannot actually play it while recording OBS without lagging terribly. So yeah, that idea's out of the bag. So now the video is gonna be just a bunch of like background images and B-roll, a bit like how most of my videos are. More work for me. Hooray! Anyways, back to past Bill, talking about the Ultimate Warrior and how weird he is. See ya. James Bryan Hellwig was born on June 16, 1959, in Crawfordsville, Indiana. He was the oldest of 5 siblings who was raised by a single mother after their father left them at the age of 12. It should be noted, both his father and grandfather died in their 50s. This is going to be important later on. The family moved and he graduated from Petersburg Fountain Central High School and later on attended Indiana State University for a year. He then moved over to California, in which he met a bodybuilder named Robbie Robinson. Robbie Robinson got him into the idea of the sport of bodybuilding. He then attended Left University in Marietta, Georgia, and there he won the Junior Atlanta contest and placed 5th in the 1981 AAU Collegiate Mr. America. In 1983, he won the AAU Coastal USA before taking the Mr. Georgia title the following year. His last bodybuilding contest was in 1985 in the Junior USAs, so while he was training as a bodybuilder, he met this guy who would later on be known as Sting, another pro wrestler. Together, they got into the pro wrestling business. Then they attended a few small companies here and there across the states. On June 1986, James Hellwig debuted in Dallas, Texas-based promotion World Class Championship Wrestling, using the name Dingo Warrior, after a member of the WCCW locker room remarked how he looked like a warrior. This stood out in contrast with a claim made by the Road Warrior Animal, who stated that the Dingo Warrior was just a recreation of James Hellwig's Blade Runner gimmick and was an attempt to present himself as an offspring of the Road Warriors. James Hellwig would then be a babyface permanently. A babyface is a good guy in a pro wrestling dynamic. You got babyfaces and heels. The babyface is the good guy, the heel is the bad guy. Sometimes you turn to a heel, sometimes you turn into a babyface. James Hellwig became a babyface for, well, the rest of his career, and never became a heel ever again. Though one can argue that he turned heel in real life later down the line, or very early down the line. Anyways, let's continue. So, around June 1987, the WWE, then still known as the WWF, the World Wrestling Federation, recruited Warrior to join their company, and he adopted the name The Ultimate Warrior, though he was still billed as the Dingo Warrior in old house card promos by Gene Okerlund. But then his name was later on modified. Who actually came up with the idea of Ultimate Warrior is disputed. A guy known as Bruce Pritchard stated that Vince McMahon did not know what a Dingo Warrior was, but because there was the modern-day Warrior, Kerry Von Erich, and the Road Warriors, there should not be one guy named just Warrior. So they gave the name Ultimate onto the Warrior, thus becoming the Ultimate Warrior. James Hellwig claims that on one of his first ever matches, Vince McMahon told him to do a pre-taped promo, and while Vince wanted him to call himself the Warrior, he didn't want him to call himself Dingo. So, the Warrior proceeded to cut the promo and stated that he was not the Warrior, or that Warrior, or this Warrior, but he was the Ultimate Warrior. So, after his trial matches and house shows, appearances, and small promos that he's made, he was then put on TV, and there the Ultimate Warrior was born and witnessed by the public. So James Hellwig during his first year mainly fought a bunch of jobbers. Jobbers' whole job is to lose their opponents to make them look good. He would beat them very quickly in a minute, 2 minutes, even less than that at times. Nevertheless, he would beat them very easily. He looked impressive, he made a lot of noise, and he was like a comic book character coming out of, well, a comic book. Now, there is actually a reason to why he was given such short one-sided squash matches. It wasn't because, it wasn't just because the fact that he looked like $1 million. It was the fact that he kind of only looked like $1 million. He was known to be pretty clumsy and not really well in-ring oriented, and while physically looking impressive, he wasn't exactly athletically impressive. He was very juiced up and very much on cocaine and whatever else substance the pro wrestlers had back then. He could not really move like a normal human being because of all those roided up muscles. He was also known to be kind of clumsy and a pretty bad dance partner to have in a pro wrestling match. For example, Bobby Heenan, a pro wrestler, had a bad neck, and when he wrestled Ultimate Warrior, the Ultimate Warrior wound up breaking Bobby Heenan's neck. So, not great. To make things worse, allegedly, the Ultimate Warrior didn't really care that he hurt Bobby Heenan, which is not good. But the WWFs kept him around because guess what? He looked like $1 million and he sold like $1 million. He was a big, loud comic book character, and that was great for the kids. Kids loved buying his merchandise, they bought his plush toys, they bought his masks, they bought his t-shirts, and, he was making the company a lot of money. So, while visually he might not have been the most entertaining guy to watch for like a 20-minute wrestling match, he was still making money and the kids loved him. Alright, so, he's kind of clumsy in the ring, he doesn't really care about his fellow wrestlers, and, he runs around and looks kind of funny. That still doesn't make him super insane, which is true, but to match that insane look, he also gives some very insane promos. Now, you might be wondering, what's a promo? A promo is basically a pro wrestler talking, or a pro wrestler manager talking. The idea of them talking is to help move a storyline forward, to flesh out a character more, give reasons behind an attack, give reasons behind a rivalry, whatever. It's just to flesh out the character, flesh out the storyline, is to move the plot forward. It doesn't help the fact that this was in the 80s. This was during the rock and roll age of the Pro Wrestling Federation, which means a lot of drugs, a lot of cocaine, specifically cocaine, uh, and a lot of crazy, over-the-top characters, which the Ultimate Warrior was. He would go on to these random tirades spewing absolute nonsense, screaming and yelling at his top of his lungs in a kind of husky, raspy voice. And the stuff he says, if you are able to, transcribe it down, are most of the time absolute nonsense. For example, here is my best recreation of a very short Ultimate Warrior promo. Okay, cover your ears. Hopefully my throat doesn't die, and hopefully you are just as confused as I am after listening to this. I was sitting and I gave one reason to attack and keep him coming, not to ask, just to give, not to want, to just send. God, that actually hurt my throat. Ugh, continue on. Send the power of the Warriors down, everybody's thrown in WWF, and now they come back sick of it. Well, you're gonna get sick of it, because this freak of nature riders are beginning to swell, and when I can be enough, it's brother, there ain't no to be enough room anybody else but me and all the warriors floating through the veins, and the power of the warrior. I have no idea what I just said. I have no idea what I just read. I don't even know if what I said was intelligible. Probably not. There was another famous promo that he gave to Hulk Hogan. Uh, I'm not gonna read it because it is a page and a half long, and I refuse because my voice would be literally dead if I do an Ultimate Warrior voice. So let me just read just a few snippets, word for word, on the transcript. Snorts. I, Hulk Hogan, snorts. As you, Hulk Hogan, travel to WrestleMania by conventional means, the normals you travel was to experience malfunctions. Later on the transcript, do you, Hulk Hogan, try and comfort the normals that have been even more fear than you? Or do you, Hulk Hogan, kick the doors out, kick the cockpit kick the cockpit door down. Take the two pilots that have already made the sacrifice so that you can face this challenge. Dispose of them, Hulk Hogan. Assume the controls, Hulk Hogan. I don't know what he's talking about when it comes to controls. It doesn't explain. It literally just talks about him talking about cockpit door, pilots flying somewhere apparently, even though there is no there was no, analogy, there was no metaphor about a plane before this line. It makes no sense. He keeps talking about self-destruction. It's nonsense. It means nothing. We're done. We're going next. He was well known for these crazy tirades that he called promos and these really one-side squash matches because, again, he couldn't really do anything else. So, anyways, his one-sided wrestling matches combined with his wacky, nonsensical promos led him to be on quite the winning streak, very rarely losing at all. James Hellwig then became #1 contender and defeated the Honky Tonk Man for the Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship in just 27 seconds. The Honky Tonk Man, mind you, was on a 454-day reign, the longest reign of any Intercontinental Championship. So, obviously, winning in such a dominant fashion was quite a big deal, and also meant that WWF really had high hopes for the Ultimate Warrior. And these high hopes and this massive push did not stop just here. Later on WrestleMania 6, he would then wrestle Hulk Hogan for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship, putting his own Intercontinental Championship on the line. This would be the first time someone would have both title belts at the same time. It was a big deal. This was the passing of the torch. Hulk Hogan was the biggest name in pro wrestling at the time, and he wanted to, take a break for pro wrestling after all these years, and they chose to have the Ultimate Warrior be that guy who takes the torch from Hulk Hogan. And this was also one of the very few times for Hulk Hogan ever lost fair and square. There was no shenanigans, no cheating, no nothing. And when I say that, I mean that is rare because Hulk Hogan is a very petty man, and Hulk Hogan is another person who's pretty insane, to be perfectly honest. But more than that, he's very petty, and the fact that he lost clean to the Ultimate Warrior was a very big deal. However, this shot to superstardom didn't come without consequences. As the fame got to his head, he began to cheat on his then wife, Sherry Tyree. So obviously, after Sherry Tyree found out that the Ultimate Warrior, James Hellwig, was cheating on her, they filed for divorce, and they ended a 9-year marriage. This was also around the same time as James Hellwig lost his WWF title, so James Hellwig began to feel betrayed. Feeling betrayed, he then proceeded to cancel a planned feud between Hellwig and another pro wrestler called Jake the Snake Roberts. Jake the Snake Roberts was actually meant to defeat the Ultimate Warrior, and then through this victory, he would then later on be able to challenge for the WWF title belt and actually win the title belt. So for Jake Roberts, this was a golden opportunity to become the number one guy after so many years and so much effort he spent on trying to become the number one guy. But the issue was James Hellwig. You see, normally, it being a company, the company who, decides who wins and who loses, the company will tell a pro wrestler, hey, you're losing. Hey, you're winning. But in this case, for some reason, management told Jake the Snake Roberts that he had to first go to the Ultimate Warrior to get the okay from the Ultimate Warrior that Jake could defeat the Ultimate Warrior. Which was strange, but, Jake Roberts was going to become WWF champion. Who cares? He was going to get a big paycheck. He's going to help support his family. Who cares? He's going to do it. So Jake met up with James Hellwig, and so it said that they were going to wrestle, and he was going to win because, that's what the booking team said that they was going to do. And then James Hellwig, in reply, told Jake Roberts that he did not care for his family, he did not care for wrestling, and he only wanted to do what he wanted. And Jake better attend all the shows they had booked, or else. Which was very strange, and Jake was not a fan, obviously. But, again, Jake was gonna get a big payroll, so he accepted these terms and just ignored him. Not being a fan, but not deciding not to make anything big about it. So the feud went off without a hitch, the rivalry started, and then they were ready to wrestle each other on SummerSlam with a big old payday for the both of them. However, this now stopped because James Hellwig didn't like his contract. On July 10th, 1991, Vince McMahon received a letter of the Warrior requesting a new WWF contract. He wanted $550,000 for performing at WrestleMania 7, a guaranteed number of workdays, travel accommodations, and a higher percentage of merchandise sales. He remarked that $550,000 back in 1991 was fair, and that, quote, Warrior meant as much or more to the show than Hulk Hogan. He ended the letter with, whatever your decision, I can and will live with it. Till then, I remain at home with one who cares. So, Vince McMahon was essentially put in an ultimatum. No show or give a bunch of money to this big, roided up crazy guy who he built himself. Probably wasn't easy, but nevertheless, on July 13th, WWF and Vince McMahon agreed to give $550,000 to James Hellwig for WrestleMania 7, a high royalty rate, and promising that no other WWF performer would be paid more than him on WWF pay-per-views. Vince McMahon personally ended the letter by stating, okay, here comes my greatest Vince McMahon impression. It's going to be terrible, but bear with it.
I would like to express my deepest appreciation and admiration for you as a performer, as a member of the WF family, as a man, and as my friend.
Vince needed James Ellsworth to be on SummerSlam. James Ellsworth as the Ultimate Warrior was a very big name, and SummerSlam was a very big show. But because of these demands and these booking changes, he had to change the match due to the demands, and after SummerSlam, Vince McMahon immediately suspended the Ultimate Warrior, meaning that Jake the Snake would no longer have his WWF Championship, and James Ellsworth will be stuck at home. Okay, so I'm gonna read part of the what Vince McMahon wrote to James Ellsworth, the Ultimate Warrior, after he suspended him. Let me find some of the juicier parts to talk about. Okay, quote. When you were signed, you were a relatively obscure wrestler with an enthusiastic, professed desire to succeed. I therefore invested a substantial amount of time, money, and sincere energy to develop your talents and the person as a worldwide WWF superstar wrestler, such that you have been able to be successful and achieve stardom status throughout the world. Unfortunately, it now appears the fame that you have attained through the efforts of Titan has gone to your head. Frankly, you have become impossible to work with and have completely forgotten your obligations to Titan and WWF fans, both ethically, professionally, and contractually. Your principal complaint, apparently, is that you are not being compensated at the same rate as Hulk Hogan. Although Hulk is a living legend, is still much better known to the public, has wrestled longer, is the WWF champion, is in greater demand for personal appearances, is a biggest star and draw of WWF events, is more dependable and far more revered and respected by the WWF fans, by the public at large. You have become a legend in your own mind. You are certainly not entitled to vent your feelings by breaching and threatening to breach your contract. So needless to say, Vince McMahon was not happy or very impressed with James Ellsworth. James Ellsworth then refused the suspension and therefore left the WWF. There, he then had a few legal battles with WWF over the name of the Ultimate Warrior, because, the company owned the name The Ultimate Warrior. So, in response, James Ellsworth changed his name. He changed it legally to Warrior. Not James the Warrior Ellsworth, not Warrior Ellsworth, not James Warrior, but just the word Warrior. No last name, no middle name, nothing. He was just known as Warrior now. Legally known as Warrior. That is a level of commitment and a level of insanity that I can't imagine many people would be willing to do. But he did it. Though this was not actually the end for James Ellsworth, I mean, Warrior, when it came to the WWF. No, actually, in 1992 and to 1993, he actually came back to the WWF and actually wrestled a few more matches. Though, to be fair, most of his matches were pretty lackluster and also kind of strange. For example, in one storyline, Papa Shango, a witch doctor, casted a spell over the warrior, causing him to convulse and vomit in very odd colors. Needless to say, Warrior hated the storyline and had no control over it. Probably some sort of hazing for holding, the company hostage for back in 1991, because that's something you don't do. You do not cross Vince McMahon when it comes to pro wrestling. But then eventually, the Warrior once more left the company. Though it should be noted that he was actually supposed to become a WWF champion once more back in 1992, but this stopped due to the government's crackdown on steroids in wrestling. And, you know, you take one look at Ultimate Warrior, you take one look at steroids, and you just look at the two, and then you put them next to each other, and then you go, yeah. So, between the years of November 1992 and July of 1995, after he left the company of WWF the second time, he was more or less semi-retired. During his retirement, he actually opened up a wrestling school, Warrior University, based in Scottsdale, Arizona. Surprise, surprise, the guy who's not very good at wrestling wasn't able to make a wrestling school very successful. But to be fair, he didn't completely retire from wrestling during this time. In 1993, he returned as the Dingo Warrior and defeated Hercules Hernandez in Billerica, Massachusetts for Killer Kowalski's International Wrestling Federation. In April of 1993, he toured Europe for a bit, wrestling for World Wrestler Superstars in Germany the same year. He also played a swordsman in an action movie called Firepower, so, he was having jobs. In July of 1995, he then returned for a National Wrestling Conference promotion in Las Vegas. There he defeated the Honky Tonk Man again, and then he wrestled a tour for Germany's Otto Wands Catch Wrestling Association promotion where he defeated Ulf Hermann. The Warrior, despite holding one of WWF's biggest shows hostage at one point and failing all those drug tests all those years back, in 1996, March 31st, the Warrior returned, and he defeated Hunter Hearst Helmsley at WrestleMania 12 in a very quick squash match. Hunter Hearst Helmsley is currently better known as Triple H and is married to Vince McMahon's daughter currently, and is technically the next in line once Vince McMahon is no longer around. I don't want to say did because I don't think he can die. After his debut to WrestleMania, he would then fight for the Intercontinental Championship. He would fail, not lose. He would just win by countout, but he would never achieve it again. And he would fight some other people, mostly squash them. But the issue was for this run was that this was 4 years after his last big run in the WWF. Wrestling, at least for this company, began to change. And honestly, people started noticing that the Warrior wasn't nearly as good or cool as they remembered him to be. So slowly, fans began to have less interest in the Ultimate Warrior. However, the company still kept him for a bit, and mostly because of this new contract that he devised with the WWF. Though they still kept the Warrior for one big reason, because this was 1996, and people who know wrestling of this era would know that this was during the time of the Monday Night Wars. At this point in time, there was a second pro wrestling company that was just as big as WWF called WCW. And currently, WCW had a bunch of WWF's old wrestlers and making lots of money, making lots of people watch, and making a lot of views with their wrestlers, and making up really good shows. So Vince McMahon needed some star power, and boom, he got the Ultimate Warrior. And, well, didn't really work out. The Warrior wanted a new vision to be displayed during his run on WWF. It was a vision called distrusity. Distrusity. I'll put the word up here. You choose how to pronounce it. I don't know really how to pronounce it because it's not a real word. It's just nonsense. Distrusity. What does that mean? Well, apparently according from the Warrior, it is the creating of a truce between one's destiny and one's reality. Destrucity. Des for destiny, true for truce, and ity for reality. So, Destrucity, according for the Warrior, also stands for the name of the galaxy in Warrior wherein the terrain of Testament lies. Again, nonsense. I don't understand. It also means the living of one's life in the way of warrior, according to a warrior's 8 disciplines. These 8 disciplines are as follow: physical, beliefs, moment of mastery, attitude, commitment, association, integrity, and wisdom. So, how did the Ultimate Warrior sell this Distrucity thing? Well, he made a comic book in 1996. Um, yeah, and that comic book was, well, it had pictures, it was a comic, there were words, there were a lot of words, a lot of fake made up words. Distrucity was part of those words that were there. Um, the Ultimate Warrior was in it, and, it I would like to say it had a story, but I don't know what the story is, so I can't say that in confidence. Uh, okay, let me just read you an expert. Parts unknown. A place one's higher self waits patiently while the vehicle it uses, the human body, fights tooth and nail within a human life to limited by time to accomplish evolution and bring himself closer to fulfilling destiny, to become the energy of self parts unknown, a manufacturing plant of sorts. Its destiny to keep the returning evolution minimal and use the consequences of Jesus. This is what am I reading? The consequences of a man's evolution to build a force of inhuman paramount power and technology to battle the energy within our universe of those already listening to themselves and no others. Like, it's just nonsense. None of it makes, it's not real words. Like, what? Evidently, this push was not working. His books were not selling, this atrocity was not being popularized in culture at all, and he went down the card. Less and less important matches, and fought less and less big names, and slowly became an afterthought. And then eventually, he just stopped showing up to work. And then, because he stopped showing up, Vince McMahon just fired him again. The Warrior does claim that it was the WWF sold Warrior's merchandise without giving him a percentage. Make your own decision. So, after this, he joined the competition, WCW, the other big wrestling promotion of the time, in 1998 of May. He formed a stable opposing Hulk Hogan, who was now a heel, running the New World Order, also known as the NWO, and called himself the One Warrior Nation. Some highlights of this storyline included Warrior kidnapping and converting the Disciple, and frequent instances of magic smoke knocking out all members of the NWO, except for Hollywood Hulk Hogan, because, he's Hulk Hogan and he's immune. Also, the Warrior was given a trap door inside the ring to do something with, I'm not too sure. But whatever this trapdoor was meant for, it nearly paralyzed Davey Boy Smith when he awkwardly fell on it during a match. So, worth the money. It should also be noted that the Warriors debuted for WCW. He talked for 27 straight minutes. That was 20 minutes over the allotted time for that one segment that they were in. Eric Bischoff, WCW's main manager, had to rewrite the entire show because he stood there and just rambled for 27 minutes. A lot of people believe, and honestly, I probably also believe it, the fact that the only reason the Warrior was ever hired by WCW was that Hulk Hogan, the petty man he was, would be able to get his win back against the Warrior. After his single strange year in WCW, he then eventually retired from wrestling forever, or mostly forever. He did return for a single match in 2008 of June 25th in Orlando, Jordan in Barcelona, Spain. He won a match and became the new Wrestling Evolution World Heavyweight Champion, but then he vacated the title because he was not going to wrestle anymore. So that was more or less the end of the Warrior for at least in-ring related events. However, this did not stop him. In 1999, while he was retired, he became a conservative speaker and commentator, partnering with conservative spokesman Daniel Pinheiro, denouncing left-wing politics. Honestly, his speeches were rather questionable. He opened up his own website and posted a lot of politically based blogs and messages on his website, all being rather conservative, and a lot of them being extremely questionable. He's made several homophobic comments over the years. Most infamously, actually, should I say, he also called people who suffered and died from Hurricane Katrina as lazy people, which is not great. Though the warrior himself honestly thought of himself as a very motivational speaker. He did this for a number of years, and also, not only did he make these wild statements, but he also made a bunch of wild statements for people that he's worked with in the wrestling world in the past. Some maybe they deserved, some may be true, others probably not true at all. Either way, some terrible, horrible, heinous stuff. In 2005, the WWE created their own documentary called The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. And guess what? They talked about how terrible the Ultimate Warrior was. And also, one of the big voices for that documentary was Triple H, the same guy who he squashed back in WrestleMania 12. Which, it's a strange type of karma. Though the Ultimate Warrior did try to sue the WWE over this, it was dropped. So, also back in 2012, the Warrior began selling weapons of wisdom, which were inspirational 6x9 pieces of watercolor paper with drawings, quotes, and doodles on them made by the Warrior himself. He also used the blog to post replies to the letters from fans. And he basically just kept doing this for a number of years, saying random stuff on the blogs, taking random podcasts and interview questions, making random posts on his YouTube channel, doing whatever. Though that all changed on February 20th, 2013. There, on his own YouTube channel, he mentioned how he would appear on WrestleCon April 7th, 2013. And this same video was also the first time he ever spoke kindly of Vince McMahon for a long time. And the first he ever spoke in kindly about Vince McMahon on his YouTube channel in general. This was big because, he kind of just left wrestling in 1998. What made things even crazier was that in 2013 of July 15th, the Ultimate Warrior then became a playable character in the WWE 2K14 games. This was insane because it seemed like WWE and the Ultimate Warrior were beginning to patch things up. On April 5th of 2014, the Ultimate Warrior was then inducted to the WWE Hall of Fame of 2014. On April 5th of 2014, the Ultimate Warrior was actually inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame of that year. The next day, he would then appear in WrestleMania 30, and then the following night on Raw to do a promo, which was his first appearance since his final televised match in 1996 for the WWF. This also became his final ever public appearance. More on that later. But what I should mention first was that this was pretty maddening. The fact that, someone who absolutely hated the company after all these years finally came back, patched things up with other wrestlers, patched things up with the company, patched things up with the boss who he tried to screw over, and this boss who tried to screw him over. And, they just became friends. They forgave and forgot. Though it should be noted that in the world of wrestling, this happens a lot more often than you would think. On April 8th, 2014, Warrior died in Scottsdale, Arizona from a heart attack. This was just one day after his first ever Raw appearance in almost 18 years. Because of this weird death that came very quickly after his last Raw appearance, many believe that Warrior kind of knew that his time was gonna come up very soon, so he wanted to do something that would be able to help cement and salvage his legacy. Thus why he returned to WWE after all these years. It should also be noted that during his Raw appearance, he made a promo, and in that promo, he talked about beating the last heartbeat, about living a legacy, and about life and death. So it did seem like Warrior knew his time was going to come up very soon. This, however, was not the end for the Ultimate Warrior, at least for his legacy, that is. The WWE continued to produce new Ultimate Warrior action figures, and also he began to appear in all of WWE's 2K games, along with other stuff related to the video game and collectible genre. It seemed that the Ultimate Warrior, at the very least, was able to fix his legacy and become part of the WWE and World Wrestling as a whole once more. Also, in 2015, WWE introduced the Warrior Award for those who have exhibited unwavering strength and perseverance and who lives life with the courage and compassion that embodies the indomitable spirit of the Ultimate Warrior. And every single year, someone is awarded the Warrior Award for bravery and selfless acts. For example, the most recent Warrior Award winner was a guy named Shad Gaspard, who sadly passed away during a hurricane, but during that hurricane, He sacrificed his life trying to save others. Chad Gasper was also a pro wrestler who worked for the WWE at a time. So the Ultimate Warrior was a weird man who had some weird quirks both in and out of the ring. He did some weird stuff. He tried to sell some weird stuff. He kind of went crazy, especially near the end, but he mended a bunch of his old bridges, and that's about it. After because he died from a heart attack, right? His story's done. But no, the Ultimate Warrior story and legacy still continues. For back in, I believe, 2018, the Ultimate Warrior's then wife, or now widow, Dana Vale, also known as Dana Warrior, claimed that during nights he came back from the dead and fought evil ghosts to save her and her family from the spirits of evil ghosts. What I'm trying to say is that apparently, according to his wife, Dana Warrior, the Ultimate Warrior came back from the grave and fought ghosts. He fought evil ghosts that were trying to harm his family, and he beat them all. Dana Warrior claimed that she could feel them, she could smell him, she could smell the Ultimate Warrior fighting. I don't know what that means. And apparently, when she woke up, her hallway was in shambles, and she could feel nothing but his triumph. So, yeah. I mean, I don't believe in ghosts, but I'm willing to take this as pro wrestling canon that the Ultimate Warrior attacked a bunch of ghosts, probably because they were all gay. I don't know. But needless to say, the Ultimate Warrior beat up a bunch of gay ghosts. That's my headcanon now. You can't change that. That's what I think. Yeah. So at very least, even after his death, he had one more fight with a bunch of undead ghosts. It should also be noted, back in 2022, when Chad Gasper received his posthumous Warrior Award, Dana Warrior tried to do an Ultimate Warrior-like promo, and it went about as well as you would think it would be. It was really weird, absolutely nonsense. She was stuttering a lot like how I stutter, just trying to get a single sentence across. But, because she was trying to, take the spirit of the warrior herself or something. So, overall, that's the Ultimate Warrior. That's James Bryan Hellwig. I would like to say that it's kind of weird how the Warrior Award was created in his name because, the Warrior Award is a award to people who are very brave, who are very courageous, who are very kind, have a strong sense of justice, and, throughout me rambling on about the Ultimate Warrior, one thing should be abundantly clear to you, and it's that the Ultimate Warrior, or at least James Hellwig, whoever really was the Ultimate Warrior, never really held any of the values that the Warrior Award tried to give out to people. He's not exactly the nicest guy around. Even putting aside his political views and his homophobic things that he's said in the past, he cheated on his wife. He held a company hostage. He held a show hostage. He's mentioned on record that he did not care about family, or not on record, but other wrestlers have claimed that he does not care about wrestling. He's also told, and he's also injured a bunch of pro wrestlers. He's told a bunch of pro wrestlers that he doesn't care about their families. He's made fun of, Hurricane Katrina victims in the past. All terrible, horrible things. But, here's this award called the Warrior Award, despite the fact that the Warrior himself was not a great person, is be awarded to very great and kind people. Now, an argument can be made. It's the Warrior Award is based for the Ultimate Warrior, the character, not, James Hellwig, the warrior, not the person. So, and the Ultimate Warrior, is a good guy. He fights for what's right, he fights for what's justice, that's good and all, but it's still kind of weird that, the Ultimate Warrior is that award because, you can't really separate the art from the artist in this case because, the guy literally changed his name into Warrior. And, the guy was the Warrior for, years. Also, another fun little thing I should add is the fact that WWE for a few years, up till I think 2020 and 2019, created some comic book series. These comic book series basically treated it as wrestling if it's in a real world, all that, all the characters, all the wrestlers were all in character and all fighting each other, all hated each other, all liked each other, all so on and so forth. And it's pretty good actually. Honestly, the storyline's pretty fun. But basically, there were a bunch of comic book issues that they created that were based off of like old WrestleManias, old SummerSlams, old pay-per-views, and old feuds from history, from wrestling history, and you know, they had all the characters be over the top in character, acting goofy, having fighting each other, do all that. But specifically for the Ultimate Warrior, this was like they retold the story of the feud between him and Macho Man Randy Savage. Macho Man Randy Savage was acting crazy and goofy, was still, a human being, driving a car, going to restaurants, talking about how he's gonna be champ and he's gonna beat the guy, the Ultimate Warrior, and all that, all in character. But for the Ultimate Warrior, he was just communicating based off of grunts. He just made noises. And then, he tried to chase Macho Man Randy Savage from city to city, from place to place, town to town, street to street. And he did so by sniffing the air and following the scent of Macho Man Randy Savage as he drove from city to city, and the Ultimate Warrior chased him through running, just pure running. I think he said like one word, and that was pancakes, and chased him all the way to a Waffle House or something. And then Macho Man ran off, and what I'm trying to say for this tangent of how the ultimate, like even the comic book artists and the comic book writers for WWE knew that the Ultimate Warrior, both in character and out of character, is just an absolute psychopath. That's why they didn't write any real lines. That's why they had him act like a weird hellhound creature thing, just chasing people. Because that's who the Ultimate Warrior is. In character, he's a babbling freak, roided up freak who does crazy stuff. Out of character, he's a babbling crazy man doing crazy stuff. It doesn't matter both out or in character. He's just such an eclectic and strange man. And that's him. That's how he lived his entire life. And the way he died. He foreshadowed his own death in his very last promo, and then he died 24 hours later. He less than that actually. He died at 5:50 p.m. So yeah, he is a weird person who just is crazy. And I don't know if you can find someone else as crazy as him, because again, there are perhaps people who have done more insane things, but there are reasonings, there are logic behind that. His promos had none of that logic or reasoning. The way he acts and the way he was makes no sense to me. He is just insane. I was not born in the 80s, so I've never watched pro wrestling. So, well, I watched a few of those matches back. These days, I've watched a few of those matches, but I've never seen the Ultimate Warrior back when he was live. So, I don't have those rose-tinted glasses of seeing the Ultimate Warrior being very cool. I just see him as, in character, a kind of crazy guy who likes to fight bad people, and out of character, not the nicest guy to be around with. Is this meaning to demonize the guy? No, at the very end of the day, he was a hero to many people, many kids at least, because, he was a good guy fighting bad guys. At the very least, that was it. Sure, he later on in life, he's said some terrible things, and, that should never be forgotten, even though his wife desperately tries to make it sound like he's let it go. He changed his ways. I don't really believe that because she said this posthumously, so he's not a great person, but in pro wrestling somehow he became one of the hottest things in pro wrestling, despite the fact that he himself was quite literally absolutely insane. Um, yeah, so I don't know how I'm gonna end this video. I guess this is the end. I can't think of anything else to say, so I guess I'm ending it here. This is a bit of a weird video. I might try to do something. Again, I'll be honest, this video was a bit of a mess. I stutter a lot, I ramble a lot, I lose my train of thought. I speak words real bad, so this is kind of chaotic, and I'm gonna have to do a lot of cutting and re-recording, or not re-recording, but like splicing of my recordings of this video because I had to take a few different takes because I just can't talk, and that's my biggest weakness. That and having an intelligence, but yeah. But anyways, if you like this video and want to see more of it, like, comment, subscribe, do what all that stuff, I guess. I think I have a Twitter down in my description. I don't know. No one's gonna watch this video, but who cares? If you do, just do all that stuff. I'm still rambling. Don't mind me. So yeah, I'm gonna try and do more videos, post more videos, and until then, see ya.